The Alien Queen's Question. In the quiet halls of the royal palace, the soft hum of advanced technology intertwined with the faint glow of bioluminescent flora. The Alien Queen, Carol, stood alone on the balcony, her imposing form draped in translucent robes that shimmered like a nebula. Her skin, a pale violet with streaks of azure, reflected the colors of the galaxy, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her thoughts. Beyond the horizon, twin moons slowly rose, casting their silvery light across the verdant hills and crystalline cities of her world, a sight designed to inspire awe, to reinforce a people's mastery over nature and technology. Yet, to Queen Carol, this beauty brought no comfort. A restlessness gnawed at her, louder with each passing cycle. She was the monarch of an advanced race, one that had mastered interstellar travel millennia before other species even grasped fire. Her decisions were swift and precise, her mind as sharp as the crystalline blades her people wielded. But lately, despite all her power, an unfamiliar longing plagued her. It had all begun at the Galactic Peace Summit on Sith Prime. The summit, a grand affair, brought together species from across the galaxy. Amid the throng of diplomats and leaders, Carol had first noticed the human ambassador, Jonathan Reyes. Humans, in her view, were fragile and short-lived, their technology primitive compared to her people's. Yet, there had been something about Reyes that lingered in her mind long after the summit ended. While other delegates postured and grandstanded, Reyes had remained quiet, observing with an intensity that intrigued her. When he did speak, it wasn't with arrogance, but with a calm wisdom that cut through the political theater. His words had resonated with her, offering insights beyond immediate conflicts, hinting at understanding, compassion, and patience. At first, Carol dismissed her interest in him as simple curiosity, but now, months later, that curiosity had deepened into something more. Her thoughts often wandered to humans, their ways, and their emotional connections. In particular, she found herself captivated by their reproductive practices, so different from her own people's clinical and emotionless processes. Humans, it seemed, formed bonds, felt passion, and even love, concepts that were alien to her. Her people, for all their advancements, saw emotions as distractions, remnants of a more primitive time. Yet the more she thought about it, the more Carol wondered if her people were missing something vital. Standing alone on the balcony, gazing at the glittering stars, she allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. What would it be like to experience life through human eyes, to crave the touch of another not for survival, but for connection? The thought was intoxicating. Her thoughts returned to Reyes. Under the pretense of fostering better diplomatic relations, she had invited him to her world. But in truth, it wasn't diplomacy she sought. She wanted answers only he could provide about human intimacy and emotion. "Your Majesty," a soft voice came from behind. Carol turned to see one of her attendants, a tall, slender figure with glowing, iridescent eyes. "The preparations for the banquet are complete. The human ambassador will arrive shortly." Carol nodded and followed the attendant to the grand banquet hall. Inside, the alien craftsmanship was awe-inspiring. The walls pulsed with life, shimmering with bioluminescent veins, as though the palace itself was alive. The air was filled with a heady fragrance, a blend of unfamiliar spices and flowers. It was as if the hall breathed, in sync with the guests that would soon fill it. Jonathan Reyes stood near the entrance, taking in the breathtaking sight. His diplomatic experience had taken him to many worlds, but nothing quite like this. The palace was a marvel of organic engineering, unlike anything on Earth. He watched the alien delegates mingle, their low conversations echoing in the grand hall, but his attention kept drifting toward the Queen. There was something about Carol that was different, and as she approached, Reyes felt a strange tension. He had dealt with many species, but none like her. As the Queen drew closer, her piercing eyes locked with his, and she spoke in a voice both commanding and curious. "Ambassador Reyes," she began, her tone calm yet laden with something deeper. "I wonder what it is like to mate with a human. Can you show me?" The question hung in the air, bold and unexpected. The ambassador's heart skipped a beat, and the weight of the galaxy seemed to press down on him. An invitation to understanding. Ambassador Jonathan Reyes stood frozen, the Queen's bold question reverberating in his mind. His diplomatic career had prepared him for many challenges, tense negotiations, delicate peace talks, and even encounters with hostile alien species, but nothing had prepared him for this. Queen Carol, the leader of one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, had just asked him something utterly unthinkable. The banquet hall around him seemed to fade as the weight of the moment sank in. He struggled to find his voice, unsure of how to respond without causing offense or misunderstanding. His mind raced through the potential implications of her question. Was it merely curiosity, a scientific inquiry? Or was there something more, something personal, that drove her to ask? Carol stood before him, her pale violet skin shimmering in the low light, her expression calm, but her eyes betraying a hint of vulnerability. It was as if she had laid bare her innermost thoughts, a rare act for a being of her stature. Reyes knew he had to tread carefully. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady but cautious, "human reproduction and intimacy are complex. It involves both physical and emotional connections, something that may be difficult to explain with words alone." Carol's gaze remained fixed on him, her attention unwavering. "That is precisely what I wish to understand, Ambassador. The emotional connections, the bonds your kind forms, they are foreign to my people, but I sense that they hold great significance." Reyes felt the tension in the air, the strangeness of the situation. Yet, he also sensed an opportunity. The Queen's question wasn't just a passing curiosity. It was a genuine quest for knowledge, a longing to understand something her species had abandoned long ago. He realized that this wasn't merely about reproduction, it was about the essence of what it meant to be human. "Your people," Reyes continued, choosing his words carefully, "seem to have evolved past the need for emotional bonds. From what I've learned, your reproduction is a calculated process, optimized for genetic perfection. But for humans, it's different. It's not just about survival or procreation. It's about connection. It's about the bond between two people, the emotions that tie them together, the way we care for one another. Love, desire, affection, all of these play a role." Carol listened intently, her expression thoughtful. She paced slowly, her eyes briefly shifting toward the vast, starlit horizon beyond the palace windows. "My people view such emotions as distractions," she said softly, almost to herself. "They believe that love and desire cloud judgment, that emotions make us weak. And yet, I can't help but wonder if we've lost something. Perhaps there is a strength in these connections that we've overlooked." Reyes nodded. "Emotions can complicate things, yes. They can lead to mistakes, to irrational decisions. But they also give us strength. They inspire us to protect those we love, to strive for something greater than ourselves. It's what drives human creativity, our curiosity, our resilience." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air in the hall was thick with unspoken thoughts, as if the very walls of the palace were waiting for what would come next. Carol turned to face him again, her expression softening. "When I met you at the summit, Ambassador, I saw something in you, something different from the others. I could sense your people's strength, not in their technology or their power, but in their spirit. I want to understand that strength. I want to understand what it means to be human." Reyes took a deep breath. He could see now that this was more than a diplomatic encounter. The Queen was seeking something deeper, something that transcended mere curiosity. And despite the awkwardness of the situation, he felt a sense of responsibility. "I can explain as much as I can, Your Majesty," he said carefully, "but some things can't be learned through words alone. Understanding human intimacy, emotion, and connection requires more than just observation. It's something that has to be experienced." Carol raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his words. "And would you be willing to help me experience it?" The question, though asked with genuine intent, left Reyes feeling a rush of heat. He was a diplomat, a representative of Earth. His duty was to foster peaceful relations, to bridge the gap between species. But this request, this experience, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. I don't know what you're asking, Your Majesty, he said, though in his heart he suspected he did. I want to feel what humans feel, Carol replied, her voice soft but firm. I want to understand how your kind connects on a deeper level. My people may have perfected technology and knowledge, but I feel as though we have lost touch with something fundamental, something you and your people still hold. Reyes hesitated. The idea of engaging in such an intimate act with the Queen, of all people, was unimaginable. Yet, he couldn't ignore the sincerity in her request. She was not asking for indulgence, she was seeking knowledge, a way to bridge the gap between their two species. I would need to think about it, Your Majesty, Reyes said cautiously, still processing the enormity of her request. Carol's eyes softened and she nodded. Of course, Ambassador. I did not expect an answer immediately, but I hope you understand why I ask. It is not out of frivolity, but out of a genuine desire to learn. Your people are remarkable in ways my kind cannot comprehend. I want to know more. Reyes bowed slightly, acknowledging her words. I understand, and I appreciate your openness, Your Majesty. This is uncharted territory for both of us. The Queen smiled faintly, a rare and delicate expression that seemed almost out of place on her regal face. Then perhaps we shall chart it together, Ambassador, in time. As the banquet began to fill with guests from across the galaxy, Reyes found himself grappling with the weight of what had transpired. His role as a diplomat had just taken a turn into something far deeper, and he wondered what the coming days would bring. As Carol turned to greet the arriving guests, Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he could never have imagined. The Queen's question still hung in the air, unanswered but looming large. He had never considered that the future of human-alien relations might rest on something so personal, so intimate. But in that moment, he realized that the Queen's quest for understanding was about more than just physical connection. It was about bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. And in that, he knew, lay the true challenge. The weight of curiosity. Ambassador Jonathan Reyes returned to his quarters, his mind swirling with the Queen's request. He had never encountered a situation like this before, a diplomatic mission spiraling into something so personal, so intimate, and so potentially dangerous. As a representative of Earth, every move he made was scrutinized, not only by the alien species he interacted with, but also by the governments back home. Yet here he was, caught in the gravity of Queen Carol's intense curiosity about humanity, about what it meant to feel, to connect, to love. He sank into the plush chair near the window, staring out into the dark sky dotted with distant stars. Beyond the palace's shimmering spires, he could see the alien city below, its sprawling streets lit with soft, bioluminescent light. The planet was a marvel, advanced in ways that humans could hardly imagine, yet strangely detached from the emotional core that governed much of human life. He mulled over the Queen's words, her request echoing in his mind. She wants to experience what it's like to be human, but how could he teach her that? How could he even begin to explain the complexities of human intimacy, connection, and emotion to someone whose species had evolved beyond such things? He knew what was at stake. This was no ordinary inquiry. If mishandled, it could strain the fragile peace between Earth and the Thraxian Empire. But beyond that, Reyes felt an unexpected weight, the burden of understanding that Queen Carol's question wasn't just about sex or reproduction. It was about something deeper, something that reached into the very heart of humanity's essence. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. He stood and opened it to find Irina, his aide and fellow diplomat, her face a mix of concern and curiosity. "Jonathan, are you okay?" she asked, stepping into the room without waiting for an invitation. "You've been quiet since the banquet." Reyes sighed and gestured for her to sit. He hadn't told her everything, how could he? The Queen's request was far too delicate, too personal to discuss openly, even with a trusted colleague like Irina. But he needed advice, someone to help him process the situation. Something happened. He began cautiously, taking a seat across from her. Something unexpected. Irina raised an eyebrow. Unexpected how? Is it about the Queen? Reyes hesitated, then nodded. He knew he had to tread carefully, but he couldn't navigate this alone. Yes, she asked me something that's not exactly part of the usual diplomatic process. Irina leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. What did she ask? Reyes paused, choosing his words carefully. She wants to understand humans better, not just in a political or cultural sense, but emotionally, physically. She wants to experience what it's like to be human, to feel the emotions and connections that we value so much. For a moment, Irina was silent, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a slow breath. You mean she wants to engage with you on a personal level, intimately? Reyes nodded, feeling the weight of the words. Yes, that's exactly it. Irina stared at him for a moment, processing the implications. Jonathan, that's delicate, very delicate. You realize how this could be interpreted, don't you? Not just by us, but by the Thraxians. If you go through with this, if you agree to her request, it could change the entire dynamic of our relationship with her people. I know, Reyes replied, running a hand through his hair. That's what worries me. But at the same time, I feel like this is more than just a personal request. She's genuinely curious. She wants to understand something that her people have forgotten, something they've lost. Irina leaned back, folding her arms. You're right, it's not just about reproduction. It's about their disconnection from emotions, from the bonds that tie people together. But you need to be careful, Jonathan. If you misinterpret her intentions, or if this goes wrong, it could lead to a serious diplomatic incident. And if the Thraxians see this as an affront or a manipulation, it could spark tensions we can't afford. Reyes nodded, appreciating her candor. He knew the risks, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was an opportunity here. Queen Carol's request was strange, yes, but it was also an opening, a chance to bridge the gap between two very different civilizations. I don't think she's trying to manipulate me, Reyes said after a moment. She seems sincere, vulnerable even. It's like she's questioning her own people's values, their lack of emotional depth. I think she sees something in us that she feels her species has lost. Irina's expression softened. That may be true, but it doesn't make the situation any less complicated. You need to be sure of your next move. If you decide to engage with her on this level, it needs to be handled with the utmost care. This isn't just about you. It's about Earth's entire relationship with the Thraxians. Reyes sighed, feeling the pressure settle on his shoulders. I know. I don't know what the right move is. Irina studied him for a moment, then stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. You'll figure it out, Jonathan. You always do. Just remember that you're not alone in this. If you need help, I'm here. Reyes nodded, grateful for her support. As Irina left the room, he turned back to the window, his mind racing with possibilities. He had always prided himself on his ability to navigate complex diplomatic situations, but this was something else entirely. A connection beyond words. The next day, Reyes found himself standing in the grand hall once again, waiting for his audience with Queen Carol. The palace was as breathtaking as ever, its towering columns and intricate carvings a testament to the Thraxians' architectural mastery. But Reyes barely noticed the beauty around him. His thoughts were consumed by the impending conversation. He was led into a private chamber where the Queen awaited him. Unlike the formal banquet hall, this room was more intimate, with soft lighting and a warmth that seemed almost inviting. Carol stood by a large window, gazing out at the alien city below. She turned as Reyes entered, her expression calm, but her eyes reflecting a quiet intensity. Ambassador Reyes, she greeted him, her voice soft but commanding. Thank you for coming. Reyes inclined his head respectfully. Your Majesty, I appreciate your invitation. I've given much thought to what you asked of me. Carol stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "And have you come to a decision?" Reyes hesitated for a moment, then spoke carefully. "I believe that what you're asking is not something that can be easily explained or experienced. Human emotions, connections, they're complex, often unpredictable, but I understand your desire to learn. I can't promise that I can teach you everything, but I'm willing to try if that's what you truly seek." The Queen regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. "I do seek that understanding, Ambassador, not just for myself, but for my people. I feel that there is something vital in your humanity, something we have forgotten, and I believe that understanding it could change everything." Reyes felt the gravity of her words, the significance of what she was asking. This was not just a personal inquiry, it was a quest for something deeper, something that could alter the course of their two civilizations. "I will do my best to help you understand," Reyes said quietly. "But I hope you understand that this is not a simple process. It will take time, patience, and trust." Carol smiled faintly, a rare and delicate expression. "I am willing to learn, Ambassador, and I trust that you will guide me well." Reyes felt a sense of resolve settle within him. This was more than diplomacy, more than an interspecies exchange. It was a journey, one that he and Queen Carol would have to navigate together, with all the risks and rewards that it entailed. As they stood there, on the cusp of something unknown, Reyes couldn't help but feel that they were about to embark on a path that would change both their worlds forever. Boundaries of the heart. Ambassador Jonathan Reyes sat in his chambers, his thoughts drifting like the faint hum of the alien city beyond his window. The conversation with Queen Carol replayed in his mind over and over again, each word carrying an inexplicable weight. This was no ordinary diplomatic engagement. This was a leap into the unknown, a challenge not just to his skills as a diplomat, but to his very understanding of what it meant to be human. The Thraxians were not devoid of intelligence, culture, or power. In fact, their mastery of technology and their interstellar influence were far beyond what humans had achieved. But the more Reyes learned about them, the more he realized that they had sacrificed something critical along their path of advancement, an emotional depth, a sense of connection that humans took for granted. And now, their queen was asking him to share that forgotten part of humanity, to help her rediscover what had been lost. He rose from his chair, feeling the need for movement. The room was grand, furnished with opulent pieces that displayed the height of Thraxian luxury, but it felt like a gilded cage at times. Reyes paced across the polished floors, his mind racing with possibilities. Could he really teach her what it meant to feel? And more importantly, could he do so without compromising his role as Earth's representative? Just as he was lost in thought, the door to his chambers chimed softly. Reyes froze, momentarily disoriented. He wasn't expecting anyone. "Enter," he called, trying to keep his voice steady. The door slid open silently, and to his surprise, Queen Carol herself stepped inside. Gone was the regal attire she had worn during their formal meetings. Instead, she wore a simpler gown, though it was still elegant by human standards. Her face was serene, but her violet eyes held a flicker of something more, curiosity, perhaps even uncertainty. "Your Majesty," Reyes said, straightening, unsure how to address this sudden visit. "I wasn't expecting." "I'm sorry for intruding," Carol interrupted gently, her voice a soft murmur. "But I thought it best to continue our conversation in a more private setting. The formalities of the court do not always allow for true understanding." Reyes nodded slowly, still trying to read her intentions. "Of course, you are welcome anytime. Please sit." Carol moved gracefully across the room, taking a seat in one of the plush chairs near the window. The faint glow from the city outside cast a pale light on her features, highlighting the strange beauty of her species, her smooth skin, her long dark hair that shimmered in the dim light, and her eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. Reyes took a seat across from her, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a queen seeking knowledge. This was a living embodiment of a species teetering on the edge of rediscovery, and somehow he had become a guide on this uncertain path. "Ambassador Reyes," Carol began, her voice even but tinged with a vulnerability he hadn't expected. "I find myself at a crossroads. My people have long abandoned the notion of emotional connection, believing it to be a weakness that interfered with our intellectual and technological growth. We evolved beyond it, or so we thought. But the more I observe humanity, the more I question whether we have lost something vital." Reyes leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "What makes you question it now? You have led your people for years. Why now, after all this time, do you wonder if something is missing?" Carol's gaze dropped to her hands, which rested elegantly in her lap. "It is because of you," she admitted quietly. "You and others like you, humans, who seem to thrive not just on logic and reason, but on emotion, on connection. I have seen how you speak to one another, how you form bonds that go beyond mere alliances. There is something in the way you care for each other, the way you express joy, sorrow, anger, and love. It fascinates me, and I cannot understand why." Reyes listened carefully, feeling the gravity of her words. This was more than curiosity. This was a personal revelation for the Queen, a rare moment of introspection from a ruler who had never been allowed to show vulnerability. "You're right," he said after a moment. "Humans are driven by emotions as much as by logic. We connect with each other in ways that go beyond simple transactions or alliances, but it's not always easy. Emotions can complicate things. They can lead to misunderstandings, to pain. But they're also what make us human. They give us meaning, purpose." Carol looked up, her eyes searching his. "And that is what I seek to understand. Purpose, meaning. For so long, my people have believed that our purpose was to advance, to conquer, to perfect ourselves. But in doing so, we have distanced ourselves from what it means to live. We exist, but we do not truly feel. And now, I wonder if that was a mistake." Reyes felt a chill run down his spine. He had known this mission would be complicated, but he hadn't expected this, a queen questioning the very foundations of her civilization. This was no longer just a diplomatic engagement, it was something far deeper. "Carol," he said, dropping the formalities for a moment, "what you're asking for, understanding human emotions, it's not something that can be explained in words, it's something you have to experience. And I'm not sure that it can be done in the way you might expect." Carol nodded slowly, as if she had anticipated his response. "I know that it will not be simple, but I am willing to learn. You told me once that human emotions are complex, unpredictable, but that is what intrigues me. I wish to feel what you feel, to understand the depth of connection that you share with one another." Reyes swallowed, the weight of her request pressing down on him. I'm not sure how to begin," he admitted. "Emotions aren't something you can teach like a lesson or a skill. They happen in moments, in experiences." Carol regarded him quietly for a long moment, then rose from her seat, her movements slow and deliberate. She approached the window, her back to him, and for a moment, the room was silent, save for the faint hum of the alien city below. "When I look at my people," she said softly, "I see greatness. We have achieved so much. Power, knowledge, control. But when I look at you, I see something else. I see life in its rawest form, and I wonder, what would it be like to feel that? To feel joy, pain, love, to connect with another being not out of duty or obligation, but out of desire." Reyes stood, moving to stand beside her. He could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken questions that hung between them. "Carol," he said quietly, "if you truly want to understand what it means to be human, it's not something I can simply show you. You have to live it. You have to let yourself be vulnerable, to open yourself up to the possibility of pain, but also the possibility of joy. It's not an easy path." She turned to him, her gaze intense. "Then show me," she whispered. "Show me what it means to live, to feel. I have spent my life as a ruler, detached from the very essence of what it means to exist. Help me understand." Reyes felt a surge of uncertainty, but also a strange sense of responsibility. He had never expected to be in this position, but now that he was, he knew he couldn't walk away. Queen Carol was asking for something more than knowledge. She was asking for a connection, a chance to rediscover what her people had lost. "I will try," he said, his voice steady, "but understand that this is not a simple journey. It will change you." Carol's lips curved into a faint smile, a rare expression of emotion from the usually composed queen. "Perhaps change is what I need." As they stood together, gazing out into the vast alien city, Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was the beginning of something far greater than either of them could comprehend. Two worlds, two species, connected by a shared desire to understand what it truly meant to live. And in that quiet, intimate moment, the boundaries between them seemed to blur, leaving only the possibility of what could be, the unseen threads of fate. The atmosphere in the Thraxian palace had changed. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to most, but Ambassador Jonathan Reyes could feel it. Ever since his private conversation with Queen Carol, the air seemed charged with a new kind of energy, a tension that wasn't born of political maneuvering or diplomatic negotiations, but something far more personal. Reyes paced his chambers, his mind spinning with thoughts that refused to settle. His interaction with the Queen had gone far beyond the boundaries of typical diplomacy. Carol had opened up to him in ways he hadn't expected, revealing a vulnerability that made her more human. Yet, she was still an alien monarch, and Reyes had a mission to fulfill. His responsibilities to Earth weighed heavily on him, but so did his growing sense of connection to Carol and her people. He stopped in front of the large window, gazing out at the sprawling alien city below. The Thraxian capital was a wonder to behold, tall spires gleaming under the soft light of their two moons, streets lined with bustling life, and in the distance, the glittering dome of the Queen's Hall, where important decisions about the galaxy were made. Despite the grandeur, it all felt strangely hollow to him now. It lacked the heart and soul of human civilization. The door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss, and Reyes turned to see General Atrix, one of Queen Carol's most trusted advisors, step into the room. The general was a towering figure, his presence commanding respect even before he spoke. His dark, scale-like skin shimmered slightly in the artificial light, and his eyes, pupilless and cold, gave nothing away. "Ambassador Reyes," Atrix began in his deep, resonant voice, "I hope I am not intruding on your thoughts." Reyes straightened and forced a neutral expression. "Not at all, General. What can I do for you?" Atrix approached slowly, his movements measured, as if every step was calculated for maximum effect. "Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to inquire about your progress." The words hung in the air like a veiled threat, though his tone remained polite. Reyes frowned slightly. "Progress? I'm not sure I follow." Atrix's lips tightened, a small but noticeable gesture that revealed his frustration. "The Queen has taken a personal interest in you, Ambassador. This is unusual. She is rarely so direct with outsiders, especially one from a species as young as yours. I believe you understand the gravity of this situation." Reyes nodded cautiously. "I do. My goal here is to foster mutual understanding and strengthen the alliance between our people." "That is precisely why I am here," Atrix said, his voice dropping an octave, as if sharing a secret. "Our people value strength, Ambassador, strength of mind, strength of body, and strength of will. The Queen's fascination with your emotional capacity is dangerous. It could weaken her resolve, make her vulnerable. We cannot afford that." Reyes narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting that I'm trying to undermine her?" Atrix took a step closer, his eyes gleaming. "I am suggesting that you should be cautious. The Queen may believe she is in control, but emotions, as you humans seem to relish in, can be unpredictable. I know what she asked of you, this experiment in understanding humanity. But if it goes too far, you will not only endanger yourself, but the future of your species in this galaxy." Reyes met the general's gaze, unflinching. "What exactly are you trying to say, General? That I should stop? That I should withhold the very thing she asked me to share?" Atrix's face hardened. I am saying that you should remember your place. You are a guest here. The Queen is not a human. She does not share your weaknesses. What you might think of as a connection could be her undoing, and I will not allow that. Reyes felt a surge of frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Atrix's words were more than just a warning. They were a threat. But before he could respond, the door to his chambers chimed again. Both men turned as it slid open to reveal Queen Carol herself. The tension in the room was palpable as the Queen stepped inside. She wore her regal robes once more, her expression unreadable as she glanced between the two men. Reyes felt his pulse quicken, unsure of how much she had overheard. "General Atrix," Carol said softly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I did not summon you here." Atrix immediately bowed his head, though his posture remained rigid. "My Queen, I was merely ensuring that the ambassador's efforts align with our goals." Carol raised a hand, silencing him. "I am aware of your concerns, General, but I will not be swayed by fear of vulnerability. Our strength is not diminished by understanding others. It is enhanced." Atrix straightened, his jaw tightening, but he said nothing more. With a curt nod, he turned and left the room, leaving Reyes alone with Carol once again. The silence stretched between them for a moment, and Reyes could feel the weight of her gaze on him. He took a breath, trying to gather his thoughts. "You should not worry about General Atrix," Carol said quietly. "He is protective, but he does not speak for me." Reyes sighed. "He's concerned that I'm compromising your strength by sharing human emotions with you." Carol tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing in contemplation. "Strength. It's a word that is often misunderstood. My people have believed, for centuries, that strength lies in control, in detachment, but I have begun to question that." Reyes walked over to the window, looking out at the alien city once more. "And what do you believe now?" Carol joined him by the window, her presence commanding yet calm. "I believe that true strength comes from understanding both sides of the equation, logic and emotion, power and vulnerability. To feel does not make one weak, it makes one complete." Reyes turned to her, his expression softening. "That's a very human way of thinking." She smiled faintly, her eyes shimmering in the dim light. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is something that all species are capable of, if they are willing to embrace it." They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging between them like an invisible thread, connecting them in ways neither had anticipated. Carol's quest for understanding was no longer just an intellectual exercise. It was a journey into the very essence of what made her, and by extension her people, whole. "You asked me to help you understand what it means to be human," Reyes said softly, breaking the silence. "But I think this is more than just about humanity. It's about finding a balance between what you are and what you could be." Carol's eyes flickered with something close to gratitude. "I did not expect to find such wisdom in someone from a species so young, but perhaps that is where true growth comes from, the willingness to learn, to evolve." Reyes smiled, feeling the weight of her words sink in. "I've been learning too, Carol. More than I ever expected." They stood together, side by side, looking out over the vast expanse of the Thraxian capital, two figures from different worlds bound by a shared understanding. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, both personal and political. But for the first time since his arrival, Reyes felt that they were on the same path. And as they gazed into the night, the unseen threads of fate began to weave their intricate patterns, binding their futures in ways that neither of them could fully comprehend. The galaxy was vast, its possibilities endless. But here, in this moment, two beings stood on the precipice of something far greater than either of them had imagined. And neither would ever be the same again. The unraveling of loyalties. The early morning light filtered through the intricate glass panes of Ambassador Jonathan Reyes' quarters, casting a soft, golden glow over the room. He hadn't slept, and he doubted he would find much rest in the near future. The weight of the past few days pressed heavily on his mind, his conversation with Queen Carol, the warning from General Atrix, and the delicate threads of diplomacy that now seemed to hang by a thread. He sat on the edge of his bed, running a hand through his dark, unkempt hair. His body was here, on Thraxia, but his thoughts drifted to Earth, to the people who had sent him on this mission, and to the hope they had placed in him to forge an alliance that could change the future of both species. But the longer he stayed, the more entangled he became in the personal dynamics of Thraxian politics, and the more uncertain he was of his role. Suddenly, the door to his chambers chimed. Reyes stood quickly, smoothing the wrinkles from his shirt as he approached the door. It slid open to reveal Vela, the young Thraxian aide who had been assigned to him since his arrival. Her soft lavender skin and wide, luminous eyes always gave her an almost ethereal appearance, but today there was something different about her. She looked nervous, her usually poised demeanor replaced with unease. "Ambassador," Vela began, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Queen has requested your presence in the private garden," she said. "It's urgent." Reyes' brow furrowed. Carol had always been careful, almost methodical, in her meetings. An unscheduled, urgent request was out of character for her. Something must have happened. "I'll be right there," he said, nodding to Vela. As she turned to leave, Reyes quickly grabbed his jacket, slipping it on as he made his way through the long, winding halls of the palace. The Thraxian architecture was breathtaking, a blend of organic curves and sharp geometric lines, but today, Reyes barely noticed the beauty around him. His mind was already racing, trying to anticipate what could have caused Carol to summon him so suddenly. The private garden was one of the most secluded areas of the palace, accessible only to the royal family and a few trusted individuals. It was a place of peace and reflection, with tall, bioluminescent trees and lush, exotic flowers that filled the air with a subtle, sweet fragrance. But today, the serenity of the garden was overshadowed by a palpable tension. As Reyes entered, he saw Carol standing near a small, reflective pool, her back to him. She was dressed in a simple, flowing gown, a stark contrast to the elaborate robes she usually wore. There was something vulnerable about her posture, as though the weight of the universe was pressing down on her shoulders. "Your Majesty," Reyes called out softly as he approached. Carol didn't turn at first. She stood still, gazing into the water as if searching for answers that eluded her. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and filled with an emotion Reyes had never heard from her before. "Jonathan," she began, using his first name, something she rarely did. "I fear we are running out of time." Reyes stepped closer, his concern growing. "What's happened?" Carol turned to face him, and for the first time, Reyes saw the depth of her worry etched across her features. Her usually calm and composed expression was strained, and there was a glint of something in her eyes that resembled fear. "There has been a shift within the council," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Atrix is moving against me." Reyes' heart skipped a beat. "General Atrix, but he's one of your most trusted advisors." Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. "He was, but he sees the alliance with humanity as a threat to our way of life. He believes that I am being compromised by my involvement with you." Reyes swallowed hard. "Compromised? How?" Carol stepped forward, her gaze locking onto his. "He believes that by trying to understand human emotions, by allowing you to get close to me, I am showing weakness. He has convinced several key members of the council that I am unfit to lead, and that our people must remain isolated from humanity to preserve our strength." Reyes' mind raced, trying to process the gravity of what she was saying. Atrix's warnings now made sense. He hadn't just been concerned about Carol's emotional vulnerability. He had been laying the groundwork for a coup. "What can we do?" Reyes asked, his voice urgent. "Is there a way to stop him?" Carol's expression hardened. "I still have allies within the council, but they are few. Atrix controls much of the military, and if he moves against me, I fear there will be bloodshed. I cannot let my people tear themselves apart over this." Reyes felt a surge of frustration. He had come here to build an alliance, not to become entangled in a power struggle that could destroy everything he'd worked for. But he also knew that if Atrix succeeded, the fragile hope for peace between their species would be shattered. "What about Earth?" Reyes asked. "Could we appeal to my government for support?" Carol shook her head. "No. If Atrix believes I'm turning to humans for help, it will only fuel his argument that I have been corrupted. This must be handled internally. But there is one thing you can do." Rey's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Carol hesitated, and for a moment, Reyes saw the conflict in her eyes. She was a queen, a ruler responsible for the fate of an entire species. But in that moment, she was also just a woman caught between duty and desire. "I need you to leave the palace," she said finally, her voice strained. "Atrix sees you as the catalyst for my change. If you stay, he will use you as a pawn in his plan. But if you go, I may be able to convince the council that I am still in control, that this alliance with humanity is in our best interest." Reyes felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Leaving now, when everything was on the line, felt like abandoning her. But he also knew that staying could make things worse. "You asking me to walk away?" Reyes said quietly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "After everything we've been through?" Carol's eyes softened, and for a brief moment she reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand. "I'm asking you to trust me. This is the only way I can protect both you and my people." Reyes closed his eyes, his mind warring with his heart. Every instinct told him to stay, to fight alongside her. But deep down, he knew she was right. He was an outsider here, a variable that Atrix could use to his advantage. When he opened his eyes, Carol was watching him intently, her expression unreadable. "All right," he said softly, his voice laced with resignation. "I'll leave." Carol nodded, though the tension in her posture didn't ease. "There is a ship waiting for you at the northern dock. It will take you to a neutral station where you can contact Earth. I will send word once it's safe for you to return." Rey stared at her for a long moment, memorizing the lines of her face, the way her eyes shimmered with the weight of everything unsaid. He had come here expecting to build bridges, but he hadn't anticipated how personal those bridges would become. "Take care of yourself, Carol," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. Carol's lips parted as if she wanted to say something more, but the words never came. Instead, she gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Without another word, Reyes turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As he left the garden, the weight of the impending conflict pressed down on him, suffocating in its intensity. The threads of diplomacy were unraveling, and the fate of both worlds hung in the balance. But as he walked, one thought remained clear in his mind. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Not if he had anything to say about it.